For the next step of your portrait, you're going to be working with your Nupastels, and I've got the 12 pack, though you may also get the 24 pack. There's a slightly wider range of colors here. Either way, with the 12 or the 24 pack, you're going to have the colors that you need to do this project. The 24 pack just gives you a little bit more range in terms of the intensity. There's a much brighter yellow, there's a slightly brighter shade of orange, and there's a few more varieties of blue. But all of the extra colors that come in that 24 pack, you can pretty much manipulate them with your 12 pack. So what I would begin by doing is taking out all of the warm colors I plan to use. And to start a portrait, no matter the skin tone, you want to have either a yellow-orange base or a red-orange base. So if you're drawing someone with fair, light skin, you're going to have more yellow in the base tone. If you're drawing someone with darker skin, you want to add progressively more red, so it reads more as a tertiary red-orange rather than a yellow-orange. You begin with the warm colors because you're just putting down your base tone. Then you'll go over top of those warm colors with your cool colors. So I've already pulled out the yellow, the orange, and the red. Now I'm going to pull out the lime green. I have a slightly darker green. And I'm going to take out my blue as well as my purple. Now, notice that my sticks are broken into pieces. I've had this kit since I was in college, and I've replaced some of the colors, like the red has been replaced with the new stick, and I've actually run out of white, so I replaced my white with a piece of white charcoal. The white charcoal is not nearly as soft as the Nupastels, but it'll get the job done. I've broken these into chunks over the years because when you drop a piece, it breaks, but it also makes it a little easier to handle when they're in smaller chunks. So you can go ahead and break off a little piece if you'd like. The other color I'm going to pull out is this brown. This is a close to a raw umber. It's a pretty cool brown. We'll use that at the very end. The reason you want to have all these colors out is so that you see them and you use them, because if you don't see them in front of you, then odds are you are not going to make use of them. The first thing you want to do, if there's any lines that are super dark, you should take your white plastic eraser and just lightly drag your eraser over those lines. That will keep them from showing through the pastel. I really like the Nupastel brand because it's highly pigmented and it's also very soft. So I'm going to begin by just laying down with medium pressure some yellow. I'm going to avoid the eyes, but I'll go over the lips, the nose, and anywhere that there's exposed skin. If you see your ears, mark this color in on your ears. Mark it in on your neck. Anywhere that you have skin tone, you want to develop it at the same time to create unity in your work of art. So you're going to work your way down the rainbow from the brightest of the warm colors to the brightest of the cool colors, and then all the way down. So you're progressively stacking these colors one on top of the next. So the next color I'm going to use is my orange. And anywhere that the skin needs to be darker, where there's a shadow, use your photo, but also use a mirror at this point. And you're going to be pretty liberal with the orange. And you'll see why in the next step. You need it there to establish where the darks go, but also because once the cool colors go over top, this will neutralize and turn brown. And then from that brown, you can either lighten or darken the skin tone as you need to. Your skin is going to start to look sort of like sherbet at this point, and that's what you want to happen. Anywhere that it's dark, you've already put the orange down, so now you just continue along with your red. So you are overlapping in the areas where you already put some orange. With each color, you're using progressively less and less. I'm not pushing down super hard, okay? I'm using a moderate touch, but I'm also using the color to reveal the form, because at this point, I'm starting to lose some of the lines. So I'm gonna come in around the nose to kind of re-reveal that form. Now I'm gonna be doing all of my blending with my hands, but you guys should be using something between your fingers and the paper, because after a while your fingers get dirty and you'll start muddying up your colors, but also your hands, your fingers, they have oils in them that will eventually discolor your drawing. Before I move on, I just want to give a very light coat of red over top of the areas of exposed yellow. Super, super light, just to tone down that yellow slightly. Okay, so from there, I'm going to add the green. I'm not going to develop the lips right now. I'll leave that for the end. And when I start to add in the cooler colors, I'll hold the chalk more like a pencil, so I have a little bit more control over it. So instead of using the entire side of the pastel like I was with the warm colors, I'm now using the edge of it, and I'm just marking in almost like little scribble lines. The more you practice this, the more you work with the pastels, the easier it will come. So it might feel kind of foreign in the beginning to layer all of these colors. You're not blending anything yet. You're just building up color. And you're manipulating the intensity right now. Value comes later. Now to the darkest green. To find your skin tones, you can flip your wrist over and look at the colors that you see showing through. I've got some turquoise, some pink, some purple. Now these colors right now look sort of arbitrary in my drawing, but we will be blending these to get local color. And you have to rely a little bit on, well, not a little, a lot on color theory. So anywhere that you have red, you need to put green to cancel out the red and create brown. If your skin looks too orange, you'll use blue. If your skin looks too yellow, you'll use purple. Okay, the complements of the colors. Okay, from there I'm going to skip to the blue. The blue and the purple I'm going to use very sparingly at this point. You can always add more later on. Depending on your coloring, you may use more or less of the blue. Look at the undertones in your skin. Because I have so much yellow in my original skin tone, if I use too much blue, the whole thing's going to go green. But that will be counteracted by the red that I put down in the very beginning. Okay, so that's why we give a dusting of red. I'm going to put just a tiny bit of purple into the deepest, darkest areas. So now you've gone through with all of your colors. Notice the planes of the face that stick out, the cheeks, the nose, the chin. Those have been left relatively untouched. So now this is where you would start blending. And I like to blend from the warmest, brightest colors into the shadows. And as you're blending with your paper towel or your cotton ball or whatever it is you're using, you're just smoothing around the powder. I'm working flat because I don't want that powder to fall off of my paper. I want to use the pigment. So I'm just going to leave it hanging out. Also, it helps if you can kind of follow the contours of your face, so on the cheeks, kind of come up, down, and around. So now that I've mixed that all together, the colors, it still looks arbitrary. It got a little muddy because of where the complements mixed, but that's exactly what we want to happen. So now we can begin the next step. So I would go in and I'm going to start using white and yellow. So if the color you're going for is darker, then you would go in with a little bit of brown. I'll go in with brown towards the very end. But right now I want to find the highlights. And the highlights you can establish with white. I am going to use this white very sparingly. So only in the lightest areas where the light hits the face, around the lips, the tip of the nose, the forehead. I'm going to rely more on yellow for the highlights. So now that the colors are all blended underneath, I've got a base. And I use the yellow because the yellow is warmer and it perks up the highlights. White, it makes things lighter, but it also washes things out. Be wary of using white on darker colors because it just cancels out all of the color that you've established. But what happens when you do add the white sparingly is that the skin starts to look sort of like putty. It's very smooth. It just helps to bring all of the colors together. Right now my skin tone is overwhelmingly green. So before I move in with the brown, I'm going to cancel out the greens by putting a little bit of red over top. There are a few areas that look a little bit too purple. So yellow is the opposite of purple. I'm going to mark in a few marks of this here and there. And then blend it in. So at this point, you're just going back and forth with your color. Canceling colors out, you're working with intensity, blending your colors back in. I'm going to put a little bit more red and a little white on the cheeks for a little bit more of a glow. The white charcoal, because it's very slightly in terms of the binder from the Nupastel, doesn't blend in quite as nicely. I'm going to put a little bit of yellow over top to warm it up. The color that I'm talking to you about, this can be used for any type of subject, a still life, a landscape. You're just working with color to cancel other colors out, to heighten the intensity of colors. If I were to make my hair green, that would bring out the red in the skin and it would be really, really vibrant. Okay, that's color relativity. When you place complements next to one another, they intensify one another. When you mix them together, like I'm doing with the red and the green, they neutralize one another. So from here, I'm going to put a light dusting of brown now that I've done some blending, because the brown is going to push all of the colors down. It's just like looking at the veins under your skin. There's color that lies underneath your flesh. And by working with those colors at first, it will create a much more lifelike, much more realistic portrait. Okay, so now I need to begin to lighten the skin to make it look more like myself. Depending on your skin tone, you will either continue building with the opposite colors to make it darker, or you can, after you've put down the brown to kind of unify everything, Then you can start working back in with your white. If you have the larger set, there is a variety of colors in there that you can use. But if you follow this process step by step, you're going to end up mixing the colors that are in that larger set on your page. So you really don't need it. I bought that a few years ago, and I very rarely use the additional colors outside of the core 12. I'm using the white right now to go back in and bring out some of the contours that maybe got a little bit lost. So don't worry if it looks not accurate in terms of the color, because it's a process. You layer, you blend, you build colors up. I'm not being super detailed at this point, because after I add in the darkness for the hair color and things like that, it's going to change how the color on my face looks. By having the darker values around my skin tone, it will make the skin look lighter in comparison. And you may find that you need to go back in and work a little bit more with your range of color. So anywhere that I want to make it look a little bit more alive, less like the undead, I'm going to add in some pink. You can even use the dust as a drawing tool. Pink's a value, right? It's a tint. It is pure hue, red, mixed with white. Okay, I want to add in the lips at this point, and I'm going to put them in with a little bit of red at first. I'm going to neutralize that red with my green. And I start with the lighter green, and then I'm going to go to my darker green. I'm going to use the darker green a little bit on top. Your upper lip is slightly darker than your lower lip. And I'm even going to push some of that pigment out into the flesh tones. Then I can go in, let's use a little bit of purple to reveal the shadow. You should use a Q-tip at this point to blend. If the purple is a little too arbitrary for you, you can use brown as well. I like to use cool colors in the shadows. Like anywhere that it needs to be slightly darker, I will put purple or blue. So I'm going to re-reveal the eyelids, maybe the edge of the nose, the nostrils. Because now I have a lot more red here, the purple, it's analogous, right? It's closely related. So it's picking up on that color. And I'm using this more like I would a pencil. So I'm outlining where I see there's literally a line on my face, like the shadow that my nostrils make, or the edge of the side of my nose. Also around the ball of your nose, depending on the lighting in your photo, you may see a little bit of shading that helps to bring that forward. And a little bit more in the shadows. I like how this purple looks against the warmer tones in my skin, so I'm gonna use a little bit more of it. If you realize that you've used too much, all you need to do is go over it with some yellow to neutralize it and push it back down into the pigment that you've already built up. Okay, so that's the basic skin process. So you'll go back and forth on the colors, and I encourage you to work not just from your photograph, but look in a mirror to really see the shadows. A lot of times the photos, it will wash out the contours of your face, and you need to make sure and get those marked in. I've colored over the eyebrows So I'm going to just mark those back in with a little bit of my brown chalk. But I'll come back to those in the next video where I show you how to develop the details. Down here by my nose, it's starting to get a little muddy, so I'm going to add even a little bit more yellow, like so, and then blend it in. And that color is going to get me a little closer to what I want. All right, that's it.